But can you give us an overview of why we should care that an individual was wrongly convicted? I mean, criminal justice is not perfect. Some might say I don't want to know exactly how it's made, but what's the argument that we need to understand how the sausage is made here? Because even one wrongfully convicted person is someone we need to care about.
And I mean, I feel that as a lawyer because I feel some responsibility in the criminal justice system to kind of own it. And when there's error, I feel compelled to change those. And I think a lot of lawyers feel that way. The broader question, though, why we all should care, there's a very real public safety issue. For every person that's wrongly convicted, the true perpetrator is allowed to go free. And we know just in the DNA cases, we've been able to identify 151 true perpetrators who got away, who went
because someone else was
wrongly convicted, exactly.
Right.
And they went on to commit over 160 violent crimes, including 77 sexual assaults and 60 murders. So, I mean, that's a very real issue, that if we don't get the right guy initially, the really right guy is free to continue. And we know that crimes escalate. So if they get away with a particularly bad crime initially, the next one could be worse, or the next one could be worse.
And some of the violent crimes we're talking about are the types where you tend to have repeat offenders. So somebody who isn't identified correctly and is allowed to continue to commit crimes is likely to commit multiple crimes.
It's true. And I have a client of mine who was released after 33 years in prison for a crime that he did not commit. And that was a drag off the street rape of a young girl at gunpoint. That's not an out-of-the-box crime. That's somebody who's built up to that and will continue to offend until caught. And we don't know who committed that crime. Unfortunately, we have no way of being able to solve that mystery.
Right. Can we say the name of the person who...
that was my client. His name is Marshall Hale.
Okay. And you served how many years?
33.
Wow.
But so we don't know who committed that crime. We'll never know who committed that crime. But I feel fairly safe in saying that individual very likely reoffended and very likely offended before. And because we got the wrong person initially, unfortunately, that person wasn't stopped, at least at that point. We hope that he was eventually.
So again, this isn't some fuzzy-headed liberal, I'm trying to think how someone might say it, who's like pro-law and order. And this actually is a very pro-law and order.
It is a very pro-law and order. I mean, you could ask Jim Petro,
who
is the former Attorney General of Ohio. But you can't it's hard to find a pretty more conservative law and order guy than Jim Petro. He was a staunch Republican, staunch conservative. When he was Attorney General, he came to understand that this was an issue. He himself has led a lot of the reforms in Ohio and nationwide because he sees that it's an affront to the criminal justice system to allow innocent people to get convicted and to not correct that error, that it does affect all of us. So we see very, people that you wouldn't necessarily think to be on kind of the innocence side because it feels kind of on the liberal side of it. But it's really a very nonpartisan issue. And we see because it's about correcting error and it's not about, letting people who are guilty walk out of prison.
Well, but there is an argument too, looking at I know that you're not so much into the constitutional arguments that may tend to come up, say, in a death penalty appeal or, looking at, effectiveness of counsel, even in a non-capital case. But still, isn't there a purpose to even challenging one case, especially if you believe you're on the right side of that case, just as those who represent on the criminal side, who do criminal defense work, would say, I may not like this person, I may not, this person very well may have done something wrong, but there's a greater good in making sure that that person's rights are protected for the good of the whole criminal justice system overall and for all of our sake individually. Is there some kind of analogous argument here to
there really is.
The greater good that comes from not having a system that could make this kind of a terrible error?
Sure, and there's been pushback on what we call the innocence movement for that very reason, because by focusing in on it, people who are actually innocent, people feel it's kind of turning your backs on people who are guilty, but but the Constitution still failed them. And that, I guess my response to that is, if you don't have the moral certainty of the innocent person behind bars, And I think that for most of us, that's about as high on our nightmare list as you can get. To be, wrested away from our families, to see your children grow up without you, to be in a prison cell that you can touch the walls if you put your arms out, have everything controlled for you by the state, for something you did not do. I mean, without that crucible of cases to be able to say, hey, the criminal justice failed in such a way that didn't just wrongly convict somebody because we violated their constitutional rights. We got the wrong person. So to me, for those cases, they really bring a clarity to the criminal justice system we would not have had but for their sacrifices.